In this episode of Living the Liturgical Year, we're taking a look at three specific commemorations that occur during Advent. Commemorations occur in every liturgical season because the temporal cycles, the cycles of the seasons, and the sanctoral cycle, the cycle of the calendar of saints, intersect during the year. Although there are many commemorations during Advent, and you can look at the hymnal to notice which ones there are, I'm going to focus on three that are specifically relevant to Advent and to our upcoming celebration of Christmas. Nicholas on December 6th, Our Lady of Guadalupe on December 12th, and Lucy on December 13th. So the first commemoration is St. Nicholas, whose date is December 6th. He was born in the 3rd century in Turkey and lived for 3 years as a monk in a cave outside Bethlehem. So there is one small connection to our upcoming Christmas story, his location living near Bethlehem. But he was made a bishop of Myra in Turkey in 317, and he was one of the bishops present at the Council of Nicaea, and therefore signed on to what became the Nicene Creed. And this occurred, of course, in 325. He died in Myra, where he was bishop, in 343. Like many early church leaders, except for those who were prolific writers, little is known about Bishop Nicholas. Stories do emerge, and these become very closely associated with Nicholas's life, and therefore associated with his connections to gift giving. The first is his care for the children, where he would give out items to children that he would meet on the street. And this is often still reenacted in places in Europe today. The second, and probably the more famous of the stories, is a specific instance where he encounters 3 daughters of a man who were in prostitution, partially because the man was unable to pay the dowry for the 3 daughters, and therefore needing the money. Nicholas provides the man with bags of gold so that they're able to pay their marriage dowry, and therefore no longer having to be prostitutes. And for that reason, Nicholas is considered the patron saint of prostitutes. So this idea of gift giving and protection and care become very associated with Nicholas and the traditions around Nicholas Day. Nicholas's care for those who are without, and to connect to those Advent understandings of caring for those without food or shelter. Recall from Bernard's sermon that I quoted in the last video that Christ comes not only at the beginning in the manger, come at the end in the parousia, but comes among us now and among us in the poor. That connects us also to the reading of the Gospel from Christ the King Sunday, where Christ comes among the least of these, for whom we are to care. The third, this connection to Christmas, is a very simple one. Is of course, Saint Nicholas will become Santa Claus, especially here in the United States, when the Nicholas tradition is merged with the English tradition of Father Christmas. And so Santa Claus is a combination of both Saint Nick and Father Christmas. The main tradition around this is with the Nikolausstiefel, the Nicholas boot, and you see 2 examples on the screen here. It's filled with fruit and nuts and left out at the door. You could do this easily in the home by having these filled and giving them to children. If you wanted to take it out of the home and doing it in an appropriately socially distanced way, you could provide containers of fruit and nuts and whatever else for your neighbors, for your friends, for those who need those things. So you can take this home ritual out of the home and take it to the larger community in a socially distanced way. The second commemoration actually isn't in ELW, is for December 12th of Our Lady of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And you can see her image, the famous image of her on the screen here. And this day commemorates the apparitions of Mary, 5 of them that happened in December 1531, 4 of them to Juan Diego and 1 of them to Juan's uncle. And so in these apparitions, the Virgin Mary appeared to Juan Diego and asked him to have a church built on this specific site. Juan goes and tells the archbishop, of course, not going to believe a peasant boy. And so Mary again appears and does miracles, including having roses growing on a hillside in the middle of winter, and having roses attached inside of his cloak, which he then brings to the archbishop, and the archbishop then believes. The Virgin Mary is also said to have healed Juan's uncle, and that was when one of the apparitions happened, is during that. You'll notice in images of Our Lady of Guadalupe that it's very customary to see the sunbeams coming out and her to be standing on top of a moon and usually wearing a crown. And this image of the woman, of the Virgin Mary, comes from Revelation 12:1, saying a woman whose robe was the sun and who had the moon under her feet and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Pope John the 23rd, the one who convened the Second Vatican Council, declared her as the Mother of the Americas in 1961. The Virgin of Guadalupe has become an important symbol for unity in Mexico and an important symbol for liberation. A commemoration of Mary, like Our Lady of Guadalupe, is an appropriate commemoration for this season of Advent as well. Not just because it happens during Advent, but because Mary has a prominent role in the whole Advent Christmas story. And we see in the Advent readings in the lectionary, especially those toward the end of Advent, right up until Christmas, Mary is featured prominently. And so is that song of hers, the Magnificat, where she sings of God's power, God's ability to bring up the lowly and to cast down those who are filled with conceit. And Our Lady of Guadalupe is a prime example of someone who is revealed to the lowly, to the least of these, and is able to have great, wondrous things happen. And it's also a connection to Christmas, that that God reveals God's self through to ordinary people through extraordinary means, to an ordinary person like Juan Diego, through such extraordinary, miraculous things. Of course, that is what one of the main themes of the Incarnation is, that ordinary and extraordinary happening at one time. Celebrating with Our Lady of Guadalupe in the home could be as simple as reading the Magnificat, reading more about Mary in some of those deuterocanonical or extra-canonical texts, like the Proto-Gospel of James, which you could find online. To sing versions or to listen to versions of the Magnificat or other hymns that are in the hymnal that either speak from Mary's position or give us more about Mary. The third commemoration is Lucy, or Lucia, on December 13th. And she is from Italy, from Sicily, born in 283 and martyred in 304 during the Diocletian persecutions. Stories originate of her, and she is praised for her care for the poor and the care of her own virginity. In fact, that is what led to her martyrdom, was that she would not renounce her Christianity, but she would also not renounce her virginity. And that's why she takes her eyes out. I mean, it's kind of gory if you think about it, but because a suitor of hers praised her eyes and how beautiful they were, so she tore them out so that he would not lust after her. Lucy means light. And so her commemoration occurs here at the time of the year where darkness is, the nighttime is longer than the daytime. And in fact, in the old calendaring systems, St. Lucy's Day was when the winter solstice happened, for after St. Lucy's Day, there would get more and more daylight. Lucy, as many of you know, is depicted as a young girl wearing a crown of candles in a white gown with a red sash. So the photo that you're looking at here is my New Testament colleague, Dr. Crystal Hall, who wanted me to tell you, when she let me use the picture, that this was from a while ago. So this wasn't like last year, maybe 2 years ago. No, much longer ago than that. Why the candles on the head? Well, one of the stories about her care for the poor is that during the persecutions, she would be bringing food to those who were hiding in the Roman catacombs. And so that she could have more food in her hands, she put the candles on her head so that she could have her hands free to carry the food to them. Celebrating Lucy on December 13th is an early medieval tradition of the church, but the current practice of the girl in the household with the candles on her head is probably only 200 years old. So those of you who especially come from a Swedish background who have celebrated St. Lucy Day will know that is the eldest girl in the household, gets to be Santa Lucia that day, and brings these saffron buns that are supposed to look like the eyes that she tore out of her head, and she gives the saffron buns to the people in the household. So that is the tradition. Again, it's a tradition already in the home, so doing it during pandemic is a very simple task. Connecting Lucy to Advent is Lucy in her crown of candles points us to the light of Christ. And just like John the Baptist tells us that he himself is not the Messiah, but is the one pointing to the Messiah, Lucy does that as well. Of course, this idea of the care for the poor, which is why she's wearing the candles, also connects us to our themes of Advent. The giving of the saffron buns and the cookies in this idea of gift giving will connect Lucy to Christmas. And it's only, less than 2 weeks between Lucy Day and Christmas Day. In the home, it is not only the eldest girl that participates, it is also the other children in the household who can be the star children and carrying stars or wearing stars. And in some traditions, other Christmas-related characters appear in the ritual at home with Santa Lucia.